My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Thank you, Mr. George W. Bush, the former President of the United States of America. Today, we're going to talk about the Islamic State, also known as ISIS or ISIL, is an active armed conflict that's happening right now in western Syria and northern Iraq. Everything started in 2003, when the United States started to invade Iraq because of the claim that Iraq's alleged possession of weapons of mass destruction that threats their security and their allies. On March 2nd, 2003, the United States began to take actions by leading a surprise military invasion without declaring war. The invasion led to an occupation and eventually the capture of Saddam Hussein, who was later executed by the new Iraqi government. Violence against the U.S. forces led to the Iraqi insurgency, more conflicts between Sunni and Shiite Iraqi groups, and the formation of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. In June 2008, the U.S. Department of Defense realized that the war in Iraq does not make Iraq a better state. Iraq was the 5th on the 2008 Failed State Index and 6th on the 2009 Failed State Index. Also, because of the public's opinions favored to withdraw troops from Iraq increased, and Iraq forces began to take responsibility for security, the U.S. decided to withdraw their forces. After the U.S. withdrew their troops, it signed many agreements and treaties with the Iraqi government and ensured that Iraq would not go to war again.
Good evening. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about the end of our combat mission in Iraq.
So let me say this as plainly as I can.
Our war there will be over.
By August 31st, 2010,
That is how America's military efforts in Iraq will end.
I've come to speak to you about how the war in Iraq will end. Our combat mission in Iraq will end.
As a candidate for president, I pledge to bring the war in Iraq to a responsible end.
Thank you, Mr. Barack Obama, President of the United States. Let us continue. One good tactic that U.S. used to eliminate terrorists is to target their leaders. This tactic is really effective in most cases. After the leaders were killed by the U.S. military, they usually collapse. Other leaders that are afraid fled the country. However, Al-Qaeda in Iraq is a different case. After the leaders of the other terrorist groups were killed by the U.S. military, those remainder terrorists joined Al-Qaeda in Iraq and strengthened its power. The terrorist group is so well organized that the U.S. military could not limit its expansion. The only difficulty of this conflict is of resources with local citizens, where most of them were aligned with the U.S. After Abu Musab al-Zakari, the former leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, was killed on June 7, 2006, it did not collapse but became even stronger. Also, it changed the name from Al-Qaeda in Iraq to ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. ISIS expansion in western Syria and northern Iraq is so fast that it captured multiple large cities in Iraq and Syria, and recently, its expansion finally started to slow down because of the U.S. airstrikes. So let us talk about some main actors right now that's currently involving the ISIS. First of all, the United States of America and the European states, which are both considered as Western powers, and capitalism, Christianity, and both oppose ISIS action. Second of all, Barack Obama, which is right now currently the President of the United States of America and mainly the person who makes the decisions. And also, of course, the Islamic State itself, and its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who only appeared once to make a speech about ISIS objectives and then disappeared since then.
إن الله قوي عزيز ومجالدة أعداء الله ووفقهم ومكنهم لتحقيق غايتهم وإن أردتم موعود الله فجاهدوا في سبيل الله.
Also, as victims, the Syrian government and the Iraqi government both have their own military forces inside and fighting ISIS. Next, we're going to talk about the life in the Islamic State. And people in the Islamic State are categorized in 5 different kinds of people. First of all, enslaved women and children. These actions are found by the Human Rights Watch and have reported to the international world. Women and children are often enslaved or even being sold to other people. They're often forced to religious conventions, forced marriage, and even sexual assaults. Second of all, Christians. Christians are sometimes facing they're required to pay higher taxes or else they'll be killed by the ISIS military, or some of them just being killed by ISIS military without being warned.
This is about the end of the line if you don't want to run into ISIS. We've been told they control the mountains behind us right now, and a few kilometers down the road you'd run into an ISIS checkpoint. This is the town called Bartilla. It has about 25,000 Christians in it, but we couldn't find one that would talk to us on camera because they're afraid of retribution. The conditions here are abysmal. There's no water because ISIS has turned it off, and no electricity because the Maliki government has turned that off. They are protected by the Peshmerga, who have set up a perimeter around this town and a few other towns around here. Without that, they know that ISIS would come in and kill most of the people here.
Third, children that are influenced by ISIS. Those children that are influenced by ISIS believe that ISIS is the best, and without understanding the international world, they have the high potential of being future ISIS soldiers or future extreme ISIS nationalists who, if only that ISIS exists till that time.
أحب أن أصير بدولة الإسلام في العراق والشام وأقاتل معهم لأنهم يحبون أن يقاتلون المرتدين والكفراء.
Fourth, ISIS fighters. ISIS fighters do a lot of things. For example, they kill Iraqi and Syrian soldiers, which mainly because they wanted to gain territory, they wanted to gain a legitimate government. They also pass down the ideas that Europeans and Americans are infidels, which are not good, and thus they are the one they should hate, one they should kill. Also, they often remind ordinary people to wear and act properly as a Muslim, as an ISIS citizen. However, even though some of them feel like they're extreme nationalists and they think that ISIS is the legitimate and they should follow ISIS ideology, but however, some of other people that might think that raping a woman or murdering children isn't really that a good thing, and killing people isn't really a legitimate action they should do. So some of them, even though they're ISIS fighters, they don't feel suitable of doing those actions. Last but not least are the Iraqi government and Syrian government military troops, who are often killed or even murdered by the ISIS troops, and they are currently trying to defend their own nation. Next, we're going to talk about the conflicts of ideas and interests. First of all, religions. ISIS believes that killing infidels, which is in this case is Americans, Europeans, or Western people in general, are legitimate because they believe that they're believing in the wrong God, and Muslim is the only correct religion that should exist. Second of all, it's territorial because it wants to gain more land and to form its own government. That's why it's also governmental, and that's how it's known as the Islamic State. The causes of the Islamic State can be separated into four main reasons. First of all, religion. The Islamic State tends to focus on Muslim, the significance of Muslim, and tends to look down at other religions such as Christian. And their high dedication for their own beliefs made them think that Christianity is wrong and only Muslim is the correct religion, and every people should worship Muslim. Second, oppression, which is also the unjust treatment from the authority. Well, in the U.S. invasion in 2003, the United States claimed alleged possession of weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq. But then there's no such a thing exists in Iraq, and therefore the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is a former organization of ISIS, tend to rise up. Third, historical grievances. The U.S. invasion in 2003 did not have a really justice action and reason behind it to support to invade Iraq, and therefore economic problems and political problems after the U.S. invasion in Iraq became greater and greater, and tends to make the Qatar and Iraq rise. Last, the hatred toward the global economic hegemony is probably one of the most important ones, because inequalities between the Western wealthy states and the Iraq and Syria after U.S. invasion and the Syrian chemical weapons, which gave them more poverty, and inequality exists between those states. And then the terrorists believe that the ISIS people believe that it is caused by the United States of America. Thank you for watching this basic intro of the Islamic State. Hope you enjoy.